We also want to bring down Peter Doocy, because Peter Doocy is talking about the federal response to this and what President-elect Trump is saying and where we plan to go from here with help from our federal neighbors. Peter, what do you know?
Trace, to build off of what you were just talking about, President-elect Trump is also watching as this $50 billion 0% contained fire continues to spread, and he's got a suggestion on Truth Social. He says Governor Gavin Newsom should immediately go to Northern California and open up the water main and let the water flow into his dry, starving, burning state instead of having it go out into the Pacific Ocean. It ought to be done right now. No more excuses from this incompetent governor. It's already far too late. And this cleanup and rebuild are going to be a huge undertaking during Trump's next term.
So what's happened is a tragedy, and the governor has not done a good job. With that being said, I got along well with him when he was governor. We worked together very well, and we would work together. I guess it looks like we're going to be the one having to rebuild it.
Newsom is taking a lot of incoming from frustrated Californians, and he says he doesn't think it's the time for Trump to be involving himself right now.
People have lost their lives. Kids lost their schools, families completely torn asunder, churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it. I have a lot of thoughts, and I know what I want to say. I won't.
President-elect Trump is back at Mar-a-Lago after the Carter funeral in Washington, D.C., and we do expect to see him about 2.5 hours from right now at the club when he hosts Republican governors who are here. Trace.
Welcome back. President-elect Trump and Gavin Newsom trading shots on who's to blame and who's politicizing what over the deadly wildfires that have ravaged the Golden State. Watch.
It's very sad because I've been trying to get Gavin Newsom to allow water to come. You'd have tremendous water up there. They send it out to the Pacific because they're trying to protect a tiny little fish.
Well, he isn't the only person calling out Greasy Gav. Watch this.
Literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call? Because I don't believe it. Why was there no water in the hydrants, Governor?
Dana, that woman speaks for so many. There is so much frustration. They are angry at Karen Bass. They're particularly angry at this governor who's had a long, long time to fix these problems that Rick Caruso has said that they predicted them. They could have prevented them.
And Gavin Newsom basically has the run of government out there with the state legislature, right? So if you wanted to put some points on the board and get some things done, you could have. You've also could have had he had the political might to be able to tell the environmentalists, go pound sand. We're not going to leave kindling around here when we know these Santa Ana winds are coming. We are going to clear the brush. And yes, we are going to fill the reservoirs. Do not file that. Do not defend that lawsuit. Do not. There are lots of things that he could have done. It is. I was thinking today, imagine if Ron DeSantis were the governor of Florida. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, the governor of California. Yeah. Even for a year, the things that might be different today. And I think that her being willing to go up to him and Gavin Newsom being willing to talk to her at least, rather than Karen Bass, who was just dumbfounded after 14 hours on a flight and couldn't come up with "I'm sorry." But what was she doing? Just watching the flight map for 14 hours? And
no, she said she was on the phone, but it doesn't feel like
it doesn't really look like. But they didn't fill up the reservoirs. This is also something that, one, there's the short-term problem, but there is a longer-term problem, and we've talked about that with little Delta smelt and all of these things. There is a reckoning coming. And one of the exciting things for people that want to regroup and have better environmental and land conservation policies going forward is that with this new administration, you have a lot of different people that will be there. And one of them is Governor Doug Burgum of North Dakota. He understands these issues very, very well and will be instrumental in helping make this happen. And then Brooke Rollins over at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they oversee forests. So I think you're going to see a concentrated effort to make sure this doesn't happen again. But we're just at that tipping point of understanding the scope and scale of this disaster.
Yes.
And that woman was just one person who lost everything, doesn't know where her kids are going to go to school.
No, the schools have literally burned down. And again, you're talking about something that is so incredibly personal. But Greg, obviously you are from California. Gavin Newsom has had a lot of time to fix these things, but he doesn't want to because they're not sexy. You know, as you pointed out in the past, he's much more interested in virtue signaling and talking about things that feel good and make him seem like a good person, as opposed to tackling the things that he's not going to get a lot of credit for, that take a lot more work, but will help the long-term health of the state should he resign.
Excellent question. You know, I find that these strongest anti-communists were once communists. You know, the most persuasive Republicans are usually an ex-Democrat that was burned by their policies. Look at the trans movement. The most persuasive voices on against child mutilation are the detransitioners. You look at the most interesting Republicans we have now, they're basically canceled Democrats, Elon Musk, RFK Jr., Tulsi. So the most powerful agent for change is the person burned by their own beliefs. And I think you're going to see that. I was just thinking, too, the reaction to the fires in LA kind of mirrored the reaction to crime in New York. It's where the public suddenly realizes that there's no help coming. There's no help coming. And we sit there and we talked about crime for years and nobody listened. We have a governor who went on the subway and said how safe it is. And days later, a woman was set on fire. Ironically, it took a woman in flames to get people to realize that platitudes won't save you. And it's doing that right here. Lastly, it's weird. I was just thinking about this, that, you know, so many people are homeless. There's like thousands of homeless people. I don't think any of them are going to be sleeping on the streets. Just think about why not? What's the difference?
Well, the money is allocated towards something that hasn't gotten better. It has only gotten worse.
No, I'm just saying there are people who are homeless that aren't going to be on the streets. So why are the homeless on the streets? You know what I mean? It's like we think like they don't have there's something about the lifestyle. If you have a network of people around you, if you haven't cut yourself off from the world, you will find a place.
So people are angry. The anger has to go somewhere. Why shouldn't it go to the governor?
It should. And I think that he feels okay about it. I mean, he wasn't trying to turn his back on her and push her off on a staffer. I think that Gavin Newsom, especially in the post-French Laundry world, understands that you need to do constituent relations better, and you need to be a public face for it. And I haven't seen him cowering from this. I think that's
the only thing he does. I think he's a public face, and I think he's really good at optics. But when he says things like, we're going to leave the water up to the local folks, it's a state issue. It's not just a local issue. And
I think it was a longer conversation than just that soundbite, obviously. And I'm not here to say that everything has gone perfectly. Obviously not. It's going to be $52 billion probably to repair this. You know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands displaced. I hope that it's only 5 who have passed away, but we don't know. And it's not because I'm a Pollyanna or I can't take it. I just don't see why it's worthwhile for President-elect Trump to be calling him Gavin Newsom, or to say, like, you should resign right now. Like, if Barack Obama had shown up in New Jersey after Sandy and said, like, hey, Chris, you could lose a few pounds or something like that, or gone down to Florida and said to DeSantis, like, those lifts are doing a lot of work down there, right? How tall are you really? Like, why
I don't think he's.
Yeah, he is. He's making fun. Greasy Gavin Newsom.
You know, but Jessica, that's the issue with you guys.
No,
You're so obsessed with talk.
I'm not.
And not action.
I have action things to say on top of that. I'm making a
point
then say
about them, Jessica, because no one cares
stop talking
about
so I can.
Name calling. All right.
Actually, some people do.
No, no one cares what he calls them, Jessica. The state is on fire. The state's on fire, and you're out here saying they have water.
No.
They don't have water.
I'm saying that the tanks were full. There was a pressure problem. Either way,
Jessica, there's a pressure problem because their tank was empty,
The governor of California should not have to put a fact check up on his site that says Trump is conflating 2 entirely unrelated things: the conveyance of water to South California and supply from local storage. No such document as, quote, water restoration declaration exists. It's pure fiction. Why can't President-elect Trump take the mandate that he got, right? A lot of left-leaning people voted for him and show up and just say...
I know we're in the middle of Jesse on Jesse action, but let's hear from Jesse Water.
I was loving that action.
Jesse.
I mean, I have press releases from the state, from the DOJ. California sues Trump administration to block water rules. Attorney General Becerra files lawsuit against Trump administration. They're trying to send water from the north to the south, and they're suing them to stop it because of fish that no one eats, Jessica. That's all we're saying. That's what we're saying. We're saying that the guy can't run the state, and he's sitting there with his hands in his pockets. And you're bringing up the homeless. There's a good chance the homeless started this fire. Did you know that 54% of the fires that the LA Fire Department respond to were started by the homeless? And we're spending more money on the homeless than we are on stopping these fires, Jessica. This guy is a bad executive, and he wants to run for president, and he's got no army behind him. Bezos is gone. Bezos is in Mar-a-Lago. Zuckerberg's at Mar-a-Lago. Who's going to stand with Newsom while everything's burnt to a crisp? Nobody.
Not his wealthy billionaire donors who used to have homes. They're certainly not going to stand with him and bankroll his presidential run. I think this hurts his legacy, and I don't think he rebounds from this.
Jessica,
and I hope he doesn't.
Whoever smelt it, dealt it.
John, to that point, we've been seeing the planes come in. They can only do so much from Quebec. You were noting earlier, but this is ongoing, and the biggest fires are still at 0% containment, as far as we've been told.
Yeah, and to Larry's point about the water, the president-elect is watching this afternoon. He also saw our segments with Molly and with Jackie, and he texted me this statement just a couple of minutes ago. He's still on Governor Newsom to do something about this immediately in terms of diverting water to the southern part of the state. He wrote, quote, Governor Gavin Newsom should immediately go to Northern California and open up the water main and let the water flow into his dry, starving, burning state instead of having it go out into the Pacific Ocean. It ought to be done right now. No more excuses from this incompetent governor. It's already far too late. So that's the latest from the president-elect on California, what he thinks the governor should do to take immediate action to help the folks in the southern part of the state.
Just brutal. I mean, so many people are just in the thick of this right now. And as we know, officials are saying they're still in survival mode, looking for anybody who may have not fled or left or evacuated that might be in this mess. So we pray for them.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they weren't able to get water up to those reservoirs in the upper elevations to keep the water pressure up, I mean, that's a serious problem because clearly they didn't have any plans for anything this big.
Joining us for more on this is Steve Bardak, who owns 2 properties in the Pacific Palisades. Thank you, sir, very much for joining us. What concerns you most at this hour?
I think what concerns me most at this hour is the gross mismanagement by Mayor Bass of this entire operation. You know, she's been absent and asleep at the wheel and was in Ghana until yesterday. We don't have a real plan. You know, we had hydrants that were dry in the Palisades, which is inexcusable. We really don't understand what the plan is to retrieve the hundreds of cars that were abandoned, mine included, on Sunset Boulevard. You know, there was no evacuation plan. When we got the order for evacuation, we had thousands of people trying to leave through the same egress, and it turned into gridlock. Then the fire came down to Sunset Boulevard. It consumed both sides of the roads, and the cops told us to get out of the car and to run for our lives. So I grabbed my dog and ran down Sunset Boulevard.
Just incredible. As we look at some of these live shots of the utter devastation in the Pacific Palisades, this is Jonathan Hunt's shot. These houses just leveled. All that's left is, in some cases, a fireplace. You mentioned Karen Bass and the leadership that is being called into question pretty severely at this hour. She just led a news conference where she was still dodging questions after this moment went viral from yesterday as she was making her way back into town at the airport. Listen.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster?
This, as many are asking, where is the management of this absolute crisis? And where was it leading up to it?
Sure. We also have to ask 2 different questions right now, which is, what are we going to do about the sharp increases in insurance premiums that are going to happen because of this mass casualty event? You know, that has to be, we have to have a plan for that. Who's going to actually manage the build back of Los Angeles. We actually need a person that has proven expertise in development, that can oversee this type of a project, who is an effective leader. We need somebody like Rick Caruso.
Yeah.
We don't need somebody that is going to take taxpayer-funded boondoggle trips to Ghana and be asleep at the wheel while the city is burning.
Steve, you know, it's interesting what you're saying there. These are live pictures, by the way. We continue to watch as they are able to get some aircraft up in the air while there's a dip in the wind speed right now. Just want to finish off with this because, to your point, Adam Kroll, a resident of that area, is suggesting that once people leave, and a lot of times when this happens and it's this bad, they don't come back. Watch.
You guys all voted for Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles. You all voted for Gavin Newsom. And now you get what you get. Oh, now that your house is on fire, well, now you're thinking about something else. Now you want to know what's going on. What's going on around here? All these people who were deep blue Democrats are now going to have to pull a permit to rebuild. And when they start running into the bureaucracy and the red tape, they're going to start going nuts, and they're going to vote for Rick Caruso next time because they want to get, that's all Trump says, is we're going to pull back the regulations.
I just want to say Rick Caruso was on this program yesterday, ran against her in 2022 and lost. I want to get your quick final thought on that.
I think Los Angeles made a mistake. Karen Bass does not serve the interests of LA residents. Some of the decisions are nonsensical, such as cutting $17.6 million from LA Fire Department's budget, but instead prioritizing homelessness, where roughly half of the funds of $1.3 billion was not even spent. And it just doesn't make any sense. You know, where are her priorities? What is her strategy? Where is the plan? She doesn't have one. We need a proven leader that is effective, that understands priorities, that understands business, like Rick Caruso.
Yeah, well, that Palisades fire is still at 0% containment, so there is a lot still at risk here, and the threat is still very real. And we appreciate you joining us, Steve, on all of that. Our best to you.
Thank you very much.
President-elect Trump is calling out California's Gavin Newsom over the state's response to the fires and its long-term planning.
Nate Foy is live in West Palm Beach, Florida. Hey, Nate.
Hey, guys. Good morning. President-elect Donald Trump is highly critical of California Governor Gavin Newsom's water management decisions in the years preceding these horrific fires. Namely, Trump says that Newsom should have and refused to sign a water declaration or a water restoration declaration that could have put California in a much better position to fight these fires.
I've been trying to get Gavin Newsom to allow water to come. You'd have tremendous water up there. They send it out to the Pacific because they're trying to protect a tiny little fish. And for the sake of a smelt, they have no water. They had no water in the fire hydrants today in Los Angeles. This is a true tragedy, and it's a mistake of the governor, and you could say the administration.
So Trump is referring to a 2020 memorandum that he signed meant to bring more water to Los Angeles and other parts of California, but the state said it wasn't scientifically justified and sued to block it for concerns about endangered species. Newsom's office pushes back on Trump's story, saying, quote, "There's no such document as the Water Restoration Declaration. That is pure fiction." Meanwhile, Trump is demanding Newsom's resignation, writing on Truth Social, quote, "One of the best and most beautiful parts of the United States of America is burning down to the ground. It's ashes, and Gavin Newsom should resign. This is all his fault." Here's Newsom last night.
One can't even respond to it. I mean, it's, people are literally fleeing. People have lost their lives. Kids lost their schools. Families completely torn asunder. Churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it.
What is the situation with the water? Obviously, in Palisades, it ran out last night in the hydrants.
The local folks are trying to figure that out. I mean, just when you have a system that's not dissimilar to what we've seen in other extraordinarily large-scale fires, whether it be pipe, electricity, or whether it just be the complete overwhelm of the system.
Trump will attend former President Jimmy Carter's funeral in Washington, D.C. today, and then he'll fly back to Palm Beach, where he will meet with Republican governors at Mar-a-Lago tonight. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Nate, thank you very much.
Yeah, they're talking about the tanks. They were empty at 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, they were empty.
On Tuesday?
On Tuesday. You got to be kidding me. Pacific Palisades, I mean, if you have a $3 million home, if the taxes are like New York, it's probably $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in taxes you're paying. And you can't get a hydrant?
Yeah.
You can't get a hydrant in front of your house? I mean, what about working class areas? If the high tax areas can't do this, and Rick Caruso came out and said, I talked to firefighters. They are frustrated. They're pulling up, and they said there's no water there, and they said that they don't have equipment necessary to fight. So, and while she decides, Karen Bass says, I'm looking at my budget, and I got to give over $1 billion to homeless, and I got to cut $23 million from the budget for firefighters. And they came back and said, you can't cut 23. So she says, all right, we'll just cut 17. How does that sound?
I would just like someone to tell me the appropriate time to criticize the leadership here. I mean, to the president, and I talked to the president last night, his criticism is warranted. He predicted this before it even happened. And he said, this is something that we can do to solve this problem. Okay, they don't do it. And now we're in this mess. A governor who loves to do press conference, loves the showboat of, the office, but when it comes to management and leadership stuff, he was asked about the fire hydrants, and he says he's going to leave it to the locals. There's a tragedy going on county to county, okay, city to city. You would think the state would have a position on that. And he says, just go to the locals. That's a failure of leadership.
One young man in Pacific Palisades, I saw an interview with him. He was a high schooler. And he said they came to our house to try to hook up to the fire hydrant right in front of our home, and there was no water. Absolutely no water in this neighborhood in America. That shouldn't happen. Who's responsible for that? Who should be held accountable? Is it Karen Bass? Is it whoever's over the community of Pacific Palisades? The water problem needs to be fixed there, especially when there was an alert a few days before and Karen Bass goes over to Ghana and then flies back and won't answer questions. The reporter says, with Sky News, says, do you want to apologize to your community? She didn't say anything. Do you want to apologize for cutting the firefighters' budget so much? Why is homeless getting more than $1 billion and firefighters are getting their budget cut $17 million?
Well, look, the problem was, and you saw it live yesterday, there were 100-mile-an-hour winds. You could have 1 jillion gallons of water. It's not going to put it out. Obviously, what has happened as the winds have gone down and the fire crews have been able to get in and get back up into the air, they've been able to use the existing facilities. One of the problems is they've got these great big tanks. Apparently, the city of Los Angeles has 114 massive tanks. They were all filled up at the beginning, but then nobody was expecting that kind of demand, and then it ran out. So going forward, your point about criticizing the leadership is accurate. It's like, okay, who decided we would only have this number of things? Who decided we would only have this number of tanks, this number of trucks, and stuff like this? And also going forward, I think a lot of the people in California are going to say, we could have had more water coming from that San Joaquin Delta thing if there weren't so many environmental protections for a tiny little fish that has been declared extinct.
Well, even Donald Trump in November of 2018, almost 9 years ago, he was out in the woods with Gavin Newsom saying, you need to fix your forests. How can Austria do this? How can Finland do this? They have many more trees and more forests than you do in California, and they don't have forest fires like California does.
I wonder if those tanks are actually full, Steve. I know you got to take them at their word, who's checking them, but I wonder if they were actually even full, because you don't run out in hours. It doesn't matter if it's a big or small fire. You can't run out hours into a huge fire, even before you even know the magnitude of it. Maybe you can't get it out, but you could just save neighborhoods.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.